Have you ever been driving down the highway and suddenly found yourself behind a brand new truck that costs more than most people's houses? You know the one I'm talking about. The gleaming monster with chrome everything, leather seats that probably cost more than your monthly rent, and a payment that would make your mortgage broker weep. And here's the thing that really gets me. The person driving it probably makes less money than you do. So, what's going on here? How are regular people somehow affording these astronomical car payments that seem to defy basic mathematics? My name is Ryan, and I spend way too much time thinking about money and why people make the financial decisions they do. If you've ever wondered how your neighbor can afford that $70,000 pickup truck while complaining about grocery prices, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps explain this modern mystery. Now, before we dive into the mechanics of how people are pulling this off, let me paint you a picture of what we're actually dealing with here. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most of these people aren't secretly millionaires hiding their wealth. They're not crypto billionaires or trust fund babies. They're teachers, nurses, mechanics, retail workers, and office employees. Regular folks with regular jobs who somehow found a way to make the numbers work. Or at least they think they did. The truth is, there's a whole system designed to make these impossible payments seem possible. And understanding how this system works isn't just about satisfying curiosity. It's about protecting yourself from making a financial decision that could derail your future for the next 7 to 10 years. Let's start with the most obvious question. How much are we actually talking about here? Because when I tell people the average car payment numbers, they usually assume I'm making them up. The average new car payment has climbed to over $700 per month. $700. That's not for a luxury vehicle or some exotic sports car. That's the average payment for a regular new car purchased by a regular person. But it gets worse when you start looking at trucks and SUVs, which have become the default choice for most American buyers. These payments routinely exceed $900 per month, and it's not uncommon to see payments over $1,200. $1,200 every single month for 6, 7, or even 8 years. We're talking about payments that total more than $80,000 over the life of the loan. And that's before you factor in insurance, maintenance, and fuel costs. Now, you might be thinking, well, Ryan, maybe people are just making a lot more money these days. Maybe wages have gone up enough to support these kinds of payments. And if that's what you're thinking, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's not what's happening at all. The median household income has increased, sure, but nowhere near enough to justify these payment amounts using traditional financial wisdom. So, how are people doing it? The answer lies in a combination of factors that have fundamentally changed how Americans approach car buying. And none of these factors are necessarily good news for the people signing these loan documents. First, let's talk about loan terms. Remember when a car loan was 3 years, maybe 4 if you really stretched it? Those days are as dead as the flip phone. Today's car loans routinely stretch 6, 7, or 8 years into the future. Some lenders are even offering 10-year car loans, which honestly sounds like something from a financial horror movie. The appeal is obvious. If you spread that $60,000 truck payment over 8 years instead of 4, the monthly payment drops significantly. Suddenly, that truck that would have required a $1,500 monthly payment over 4 years becomes manageable at $900 over 8 years. The monthly number looks reasonable, which is exactly what the buyer focuses on. But here's what most people don't think about when they're sitting in that dealership. By extending the loan term, they're not just lowering the monthly payment, they're dramatically increasing the total amount they'll pay for the vehicle. That $900 payment over 8 years adds up to over $86,000, compared to about $72,000 if they had taken the 4-year loan. That's an extra $14,000 just for the privilege of having a lower monthly payment. Even worse, they'll be making payments on that truck long after it's worth a fraction of what they paid for it. Cars depreciate rapidly, especially in the first few years. By year 5 or 6 of that 8-year loan, they'll owe significantly more than the vehicle is worth. They'll be trapped in what's called negative equity, unable to sell or trade the vehicle without writing a check to cover the difference. But extended loan terms are just the beginning of how people are making these payments work. The second major factor is the rise of 0% financing and other promotional interest rates. Walk into any dealership and you'll see signs advertising 0% APR for qualified buyers. Sounds amazing, right? Free money to buy that new truck. Here's the thing about those 0% offers that dealers definitely don't want you to understand. They're not actually free money. The cost of that financing is built into the price of the vehicle. You're either paying full price for the car and getting 0% financing, or you're getting a discount on the car and paying market rate interest. But you're not getting both. More importantly, those 0% offers usually come with strict qualification requirements and shorter loan terms. The people who actually qualify for 0% financing are typically the same people who could afford to pay cash for the vehicle anyway. For everyone else, the interest rates on these extended car loans can be substantial, especially if their credit isn't perfect. Then there's the trade-in game, which has become increasingly important in how people manage these large car payments. Here's how it typically works. Someone buys a new car with a 6 or 7 year loan. After 3 or 4 years, they're tired of the car or want something newer, but they still owe more on the loan than the car is worth. So what do? They roll that negative equity into a new loan for an even more expensive vehicle. This creates a cycle where people are constantly paying for cars they no longer own, while simultaneously taking on debt for new cars. Their loan balances keep growing even though they're making payments every month. It's like a financial hamster wheel, where the faster you run, the further behind you get. The dealers love this arrangement because it creates customers for life. Once someone is trapped in the negative equity cycle, they become a captive audience for new vehicle purchases. They can't afford to break free from the cycle because doing so would require writing a check for thousands of dollars just to get out of their current loan. But perhaps the most concerning trend is how normalized these extreme car payments have become. People who would never dream of spending $1,200 a month on anything else somehow convince themselves that it's reasonable for transportation. Think about it this way. If someone told you they were spending $1,200 a month on coffee, you'd probably stage an intervention. If they said they were dropping that much on clothes every month, you'd assume they had a serious shopping addiction. But somehow, when it's a car payment, we just nod and say, well, you need reliable transportation. This normalization didn't happen by accident. It's the result of decades of marketing that has convinced Americans that their vehicle is an extension of their identity. Your truck isn't just transportation. It's a statement about who you are as a person. It shows that you're successful, reliable, hardworking. And if you're not driving something impressive, well, what does that say about you? The automotive industry has become incredibly sophisticated at tapping into these psychological triggers. They don't sell cars anymore. They sell lifestyles, dreams, and social status. That commercial showing the rugged truck climbing mountains isn't selling you transportation. It's selling you the fantasy that you're the kind of person who climbs mountains, even though the closest you get to off-roading is parking on grass at the county fair. This emotional manipulation makes it much easier for people to justify payments that would otherwise seem completely irrational when you're not just buying a truck, but buying into an identity. Suddenly, that $900 payment feels like an investment in yourself rather than a financial mistake. But let's get back to the practical mechanics of how people are actually making these payments work in their monthly budgets. Because even with extended terms and emotional justification, $700 to $1,200 is still a lot of money for most households. This is where things get really creative, and by creative, I mean potentially disastrous for long-term financial health. Many people are essentially restructuring their entire financial lives around their car payment. They're treating it like a mortgage payment and adjusting everything else accordingly. I've seen people move to smaller apartments or stay with roommates longer than they planned just so they can afford their dream truck payment. They'll eat ramen noodles for lunch every day while driving to work in a vehicle that costs more than some people's houses. They'll skip vacations, avoid restaurants, and put off other major purchases, all to support a car payment that consumes 25 to 30% of their take-home income. Some people are taking on second jobs specifically to cover their vehicle expenses. They'll drive for rideshare companies or deliver food on weekends using their expensive truck to generate the income needed to pay for that same expensive truck. It's like a bizarre form of automotive indentured servitude, where your car becomes both your master and your means of survival. Others are dipping into retirement accounts or taking loans against their 401k to make down payments or cover repair costs. They're borrowing from their future selves to fund their current transportation fantasies. And since most people are terrible at calculating the true cost of early retirement withdrawals, they don't realize they're potentially sacrificing hundreds of thousands in future wealth for a truck that will be worth practically nothing in 10 years. Then there's the credit card shuffle that's become increasingly common. People will put maintenance, repairs, insurance, and fuel costs on credit cards to free up cash for their monthly car payment. They're essentially using high-interest debt to subsidize their transportation costs, which is like using a blowtorch to light a cigarette. Technically it works, but it's probably not the smartest approach. The most concerning trend I've seen is people taking out personal loans or home equity loans to cover down payments or negative equity from previous vehicles. They're leveraging their homes to buy cars, which fundamentally misunderstands the purpose of both assets. Your house should be building wealth over time. Your car should be getting you from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. When you start using your house to fund your car addiction, you've got the equation backwards. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Many of the people making these extreme sacrifices for their car payments aren't just doing it for one vehicle. They're doing it for multiple vehicles. The average American household now owns more cars than licensed drivers, which is mathematically impressive and financially terrifying. It's not uncommon to find families with 2 or 3 car payments running simultaneously. Dad has his work truck, mom has her SUV for the kids, and maybe there's a third vehicle for the teenager or for weekend adventures. Suddenly, we're talking about combined car payments that exceed what most people pay for housing. These families have essentially created their own personal auto financing companies. Except instead of making money, they're hemorrhaging it every month. They're managing multiple depreciation schedules, insurance policies, maintenance schedules, and loan terms. It's like running a small business, except the business loses money every day, and the inventory becomes worthless over time. The psychological effect of managing multiple car payments is fascinating and disturbing. People become experts at juggling due dates and minimum payments, but they lose sight of the bigger picture. They'll celebrate paying off one car loan while simultaneously taking on 2 new ones. They measure success by their ability to keep all the plates spinning, rather than questioning whether they need to be spinning plates at all. And then there's the insurance component that most people completely underestimate when calculating affordability. Insuring a $60,000 truck costs significantly more than insuring a $20,000 sedan. Add in comprehensive coverage, collision coverage, gap insurance, and all the other protections recommended for expensive vehicles, and you're looking at insurance premiums that can easily exceed $200 per month. For families with multiple expensive vehicles, insurance costs can approach or exceed $500 monthly. That's $6,000 per year, just for the privilege of legally driving their depreciating assets on public roads. Many people focus so intensely on negotiating the monthly payment that they completely forget to factor in the ongoing insurance costs until they're sitting in the insurance agent's office getting a reality check. The maintenance costs present another surprise that catches many people off guard. Modern vehicles, especially trucks and SUVs, are incredibly complex machines with advanced technology, sophisticated emission systems, and premium components. When something breaks, and it will break, the repair bills can be staggering. A simple brake job on a modern truck can easily cost $800 to $1,200. Transmission problems can run $5,000 or more. And if you're unlucky enough to need major engine work, you might be looking at repair bills that exceed $10,000. Many people making extreme car payments have zero emergency funds set aside for these inevitable repairs, which means they'll likely end up putting major maintenance on credit cards or taking out additional loans. This creates a vicious cycle where the car payment that was supposed to be manageable becomes the catalyst for a debt spiral that can take years to escape. You'll see people with pristine $70,000 trucks sitting in their driveways while they frantically search their couch cushions for gas money. It's like having a Rolex watch while living on ramen noodles. Technically impressive, but missing the point entirely. The fuel costs alone for these massive vehicles can approach what people used to pay for entire car payments just a decade ago. When you're driving a truck that gets 15 miles per gallon in real-world conditions, and gas prices fluctuate between $3 and $5 per gallon, you're looking at fuel costs that can easily exceed $400 per month for someone with a normal commute. Add in the occasional road trip or weekend adventure, and that number climbs even higher. But here's where the math gets really interesting. And by interesting, I mean absolutely terrifying from a financial planning perspective. Let's take a typical scenario and run the real numbers that most people never bother to calculate. Imagine someone buys a $55,000 truck with a 7-year loan at 6% interest. Their monthly payment works out to about $800, which feels manageable compared to the $1,200 payment they would have faced with a shorter loan term. Over the life of that loan, they'll pay approximately $67,000 total. Add in insurance at $250 per month, and that's another $21,000 over 7 years. Factor in fuel costs of $350 monthly, and we're talking about another $29,000. Maintenance and repairs over 7 years will easily run another $15,000, probably more. When you add it all up, this person will spend over $130,000 on transportation over 7 years. And at the end of those 7 years, they'll own a vehicle that's worth maybe $15,000 if they're lucky. They've essentially paid $130,000 for the privilege of driving a $15,000 truck. That's not transportation financing. That's wealth destruction with cup holders and heated seats. The most depressing part of this equation is what that same money could have accomplished if invested instead. If someone took that $800 monthly payment and invested it in a simple index fund earning 8% annually, they'd have over $70,000 after 7 years. Not only would they have avoided the financial burden of the truck, they would have actually built wealth instead of destroying it. But here's the psychological trap that makes this cycle so hard to break. Once someone commits to these extreme car payments, they develop what I call automotive Stockholm syndrome. They become emotionally attached to their financial captor. The truck isn't just transportation anymore. It's a reflection of their identity, their hard work, their success. The idea of driving something cheaper feels like admitting failure or accepting a lower social status. This emotional attachment makes rational financial analysis nearly impossible. When someone suggests they could save hundreds of dollars monthly by driving a reliable used vehicle, they don't hear a practical financial strategy. They hear an attack on their self-worth and their right to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They'll defend their truck payment with the same passion they'd defend their family, even though that truck payment might be preventing them from actually providing for their family's future. The automotive industry understands this psychology better than most people understand themselves. They've spent billions of dollars researching exactly how to trigger these emotional responses and convert them into loan signatures. Walk into any dealership and you'll notice they don't spend much time talking about total cost of ownership or opportunity cost of capital. Instead, they focus on monthly payments, immediate gratification, and social status. The sales process has been refined to overcome every rational objection a buyer might have. Worried about the payment being too high? Let's extend the term. Concerned about reliability? Here's an extended warranty you can finance. Nervous about depreciation? Don't worry about it. You'll probably want to trade it in for something newer in a few years anyway. So, there you have it. The mystery of how people are affording these insane car payments isn't really a mystery at all. It's a carefully orchestrated system of extended loan terms, emotional manipulation, and financial gymnastics that would make a circus performer jealous. People aren't actually affording these payments in any meaningful sense. They're just kicking the financial can down the road while convincing themselves they deserve that shiny truck. The next time you see someone driving a vehicle that costs more than your house, remember, they're probably eating cereal for dinner to afford it. And maybe, just maybe, that reliable used car in your driveway isn't looking so bad after all.